guess I will exert my voice and I will move this way and this way like I do in the classroom. But first I want to say my name is Lynn Salsi and I teach at Kennesaw State University. I want to thank dearly Tony Grooms, our master's program in English. I want to invite every one of you to sign up this afternoon because we need you at Kennesaw State University, especially if you need a master's degree. I also see my wonderful, kindly boss back there. Have you been introduced?
I have.
Oh, you have, but you should be introduced again. This is one of the most brilliant women in the state of North Carolina and Georgia, because she's been both places, I know, and I've been both places. And she is the kind of boss that I told her if one day she decided she did not like me, that would be okay, because I still think she is the best boss anyone could have. She is one brilliant woman, graduate of Duke University, PhD. We love having her at Kennesaw. Please stand up, because you are so valued. Very valued. Love you. So today, this is Dr. Sheila Smith McCoy, and she doesn't hyphenate. So it's Smith McCoy with no hyphen. So that's how we learn about each other and the hyphens. And I say this because Kennesaw at one time got me all mixed up by hyphenating a name of mine that had never been hyphenated. So I had a discussion and she said, imagine, I've never hyphenated and they're hyphenating something that you've never hyphenated. So we watch out for those hyphens. It's a very important thing. Today we're going to talk about the value of compression. I started out my career as a journalism student at the University of South Carolina. And that is a pedigree that a lot of people will never have the opportunity to just have that slot as a journalist writer, because we've gone so far afield. And one of the things that you have to consider today is that the dynamics of compression and synopsis are now at the forefront of everything that's journalist. And I like to tell a story. I started in journalism at an early age, and but guess what? Even I did not start that early, but my professor at the time, I was 18, was probably 60, and guess what where he started his profession. And he vowed that the University of South Carolina would not throw away all those typewriters, and he hung on, I think, for another 20 years. And the first thing we learned in compression was how to write an obituary. And we sat in class, like every class meeting, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, writing obituaries, and we had to learn to write them on time. So it's, here are your facts, write. And you're sitting there going, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. There's nothing that helps compression like being on this typewriter, having to think in a conservative or a conservation of English language, and when you make a mistake, what do? You go X, 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 and then you just start over what you're supposed to be doing. So we thought this is the dinosaur age, and we must be back there with Gutenberg. At 18, it meant nothing to us that Gutenberg was 1450, but we felt we were 1450. My first job at the age of 19 was editing a newsletter. And I had to write. They said, can you edit it? I said, I can edit. They forgot to tell me I also had to write it. So I had to write 8-page newsletter for a Belk's department store with 400 employees. And I also had the joy of going to the printer and working with the printer. And at that time, you not only had to be good with compression to fit what we call column inches. Newspapers still work on column inches, but we also had to be very good at interviewing people and putting that in those designated column inches. So we had to engage in something called make up and nobody in here has done make-up and lay-out? Make-up and lay-out. We said we're going to make out and lay up. That's what we were going to do. And a printer said, you are so good at this make-up layout stuff. Why don't you come work for us? So I walked back into the shop area to get acquainted with the printing people, and lo and behold, this is what I saw. How many people have seen a linotype machine? And there were two guys back there going at it like crazy. Well, I'm telling you, we used cold type, and that was a digital process. See, somebody used cold type, isn't that great? It was a digital process that put it out in columns, and you roll the glue on it. Did you do this?
My mother did it.
Your mother, oh my Lord! And they gave me this tour, and they were so proud of this. And the owner said, we refuse to get rid of our linotype machine because no one here thinks that digital stuff is going to work. And these are really expensive machines. So today, we are beyond this. We're beyond everything in print. Everything is a newspaper, a magazine, or a newsletter. It's a book, a magazine, newspaper. It's all in print because other things are too difficult to do. Even memos were where? In print. And you had to print them up and go around to various bulletin boards. So here we are today. The linotype is gone unless somebody wants some sort of special printed invitations for a wedding. That's still used, I understand. And what we're thinking about today is thinking. Stop. You're a writer. You may be a blogger. You're a writer. You're a tweeter. And I can get my students going when I said, I know you've been twittering. And they sit there and say, I'm judging her. She's really old. She doesn't understand the word tweet. And sometimes that's how I get their attention. Give yourself permission to reflect. Give yourself permission to read aloud. And please. What is this? A handbook. Have one in your bathroom. Have one in your car. Have one in your desk. Have one beside your bed. And by all means, have one in your living room. And that's what you're giving yourself permission to do. If you don't know it, it's fine. Because in 4th grade, they made you what?
Diagram.
Yeah, diagram a sentence. You had to learn the parts of speech. And you know what? They didn't give you a handbook to do it. You had to learn it, or maybe there was something in your textbook, but when you got to the final exam, you had to remember all that stuff. Professional writers can give themselves permission to read twice. They can give themselves permission to stand in a room and read aloud. And they can give themselves permission to look it up. And I have students complete a cheat sheet. If you know, you don't know. And you don't want to go to page 300. James and I had a lesson in the hall about conjunctive adverbs. And I said, well, the best way to see it is let me look it up for you. Instead of just explain it, you own the book. It's on page 340. The end. He can read. And he needs. So he said, I'm not sure what conjunctive adverbs are. And I said, they are specific words. Have you ever heard of however? Have you ever heard of moreover? Have you ever heard of therefore? So if you know where the adverbs are, then you, or know what they are, then you'll know how to punctuate them when they put two sentences together. It can be a big thing or a small thing. You don't want to deal with sentences that long? Fine. Just do the list and you'll know what conjunctive adverbs are and you won't use them. Isn't that simple? So, it's all has become all about, what's that word?
Format.
What are the formats? Newspaper. Newspaper deals with what? Column inches. Here's a newspaper. We're in a newspaper office. And we are dealing simply with column inches. When I worked for the state newspaper in Columbia, South Carolina, by the way, writing fashion, it didn't take long to know this much fits in 10 column inches or 12 column inches. And if you ever got an order for above the fold and you got the whole thing, you went into complete panic, especially if you had to do like the person who writes the obituaries. They have to write them like this, and it has to be good and clear and accurate, and people have to know. But the newspaper sometimes would give you 5 days to do this. And then what you did is you ran yourself crazy trying to put what you thought you wanted to say in this many column inches. That's compression. How can I say what I want to say, get the maximum effect in my assignment? Now, if you're twittering, you have a problem because you have the ultimate compression, and I'm not even going to discuss that because I think the next speaker is going to address that. That has become very important for us, not only because we can be judged as a writer on 100, am I right, 144? 140? I think I said 44, it's 140. 140 characters. Can you imagine in your life that you would ever be judged on your writing on 140 characters? But then my student Andrew looked it up and said, but the good news is they will let you do that 2,244 times a day. So if you really want to say something, he looked it up, and I might not have the exact number, but you can tweet over 2,000, and I started thinking, what if we wrote a novel on Twitter? That would be so cool. And then I'll tell you, I got my MFA with a girl who wrote a novel on a cell phone. And she sold every download every morning for however long, and people were paying $1 on Amazon, and she wrote a cell phone novel. And she told me she did quite well, but yet she still didn't show me her bank account, but she did quite well. Then, what other format? Cell phone, Twitter. Do we still do newsletters? Yeah, and not only do we still do newsletters, they can either be in hard copy or they can be downloaded to every computer in the world. But guess what? The format's generally the same. You generally have a developed format, and if you're a writer for a newsletter, they'll tell you how many words they need, and then you have to write to that word. The need for compression, so that you can get to that exact word count. So it's all about format, and we know that they're no longer just 4 or 5 formats. It's what? Infinitesimal. It can just go on and on. Do we expect that? Are we like the guy with the linotype that said, oh, we're keeping it because we don't think this printing thing is going anywhere. We don't think this journalism is going anywhere. But yet it is going places we don't even know. Andrew and James, my students, did a report on the exponential age and how we may be replaced by robots. There are systems of artificial intelligence that can, has anybody thought about this? They did a research saying in 70 years,
20 years.
in 20, oh no. I can't face it. We'll all be driving self-driving cars. We won't even need a driver's license. Your grandchildren and children will never have a driver's license. They may never have to own a car. That is hard to swallow, folks. So if you can think our cars will drive us self-driving, what is going to happen to our jobs? And I say the reading public wants to see fallible writing. Because while you're giving yourself permission to sometimes look things up, you're giving yourself permission that you can never write something perfectly. You can never have every comma. Now let me tell you why you can't have every comma. I write books. I've written 20 books that have been published. I wrote for a publisher that gave me a master's graduate from Brown University who took out my commas. This is what I teach, folks. I put commas in papers. I tell people do this correctly. And I called her and said, do I need to give you a style sheet where I put commas? You do know writers need to have style sheets when they hand in their book. For instance, it died a long time ago to say, in 1911, comma. All those commas come out now. It's no use to even put those in. So we're gradually changing the language. And so she takes out all these commas. And I said, why are you taking out commas to introductory phrases? She said, because. Are you ready for this? You're not ready. All right, so I'll be like the women in the old times that didn't have the nerve to speak forward, and I'll speak to the wall. If it reads right, you don't need the comma. So here's my Brown graduate saying she is the person who's doing what? Reading right. She's reading right. So that's why you see sometimes I'll talk about reading right. But then think about eat, shoots, and leaves. Right?
Yeah.
How many people know that? I've yet to have one student that gets it right. They think somebody's eating and shooting somebody and walking out the door. So that's what happens when we think somebody else is going to read it right. So here's your brain. Sorry. You know what James said to me? You're going to use that? It's pretty ugly. And I said, good, Andrew, put it in. It's pretty ugly. Your brain on compression. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The writer considers and there instead of him and her or his or her. Oh, wait a minute, over here. Everyone should read this or something. If time allows. Oh, that has to go there because we've run out of room to correct anything. That's what your brain is doing when you say, how am I going to make these words say something and fit in here? So, there are 10 points. You can read. Did everybody get one or have access to one? You should have a 10 points. These are hot now. You have to have it. I printed it before I came here. And you can add your own. Hello. Thank you. Oh dear, we left you guys out. There, just pass it right down. I've got more. One of them. Now, when it comes to compression, you know what your questions are. You know, how do I do this? It's easy. But the thing you have to remember is that people who write a lot automatically train their brains. Can you believe that? There are authors who say, somebody will say, Travis, you're a prolific author. And Travis will say, yes, I am, because I write every day between 5 a.m. and noon. And so his brain is being trained to form sentences, to form saying what he wants to say. It's difficult if you don't write regularly. So I recommend to people who might blog. I don't know what your career area is, but I have friends who are YouTube people that make $5,000 or $6,000 a month. And they write their YouTube scripts, and they're writing for a 12-minute presentation. So they'll do a storyboard or they'll do a script. I had a student last semester that said, I've got to hurry to my room because I make $1,700 a month in my dorm. And I thought he was going to say he was doing something bad. Like he was mixing something in his bathtub. You could never believe what he was doing for $1,700 a month. He had subscribers on YouTube that watched him play games fast. What's that called? Fast game playing? It's a career area. Never, if you are writing novels on Twitter, love it, embrace it, tell people. Writing novels on a cell phone, very important. There are people who are making more money than me, and I had to have a couple of college degrees that were not free, and they're playing games, and they're just doing it fast. I don't think that's my calling, though. So here, I came up with these, and sometimes when I grade students, I'm grading them on, can you read the directions? You'd be surprised how many, you wouldn't be surprised. You're not surprised, I can tell. She wagged her head immediately. I was surprised. I'm surprised every semester. And I'm always saying, can't you read? So I devised this. So when I get papers and something is really awry that they're supposed to know, I put number 1, number 10, number 3. Because I know the assignment was to read this. We went over it in class and use it when you're writing. And so I can tell every time when a student's not following the directions and they're not using this. So let it go. You've got it in front of you, and you've got my email there. And go. Okay? Oh, where's my 10 points? Wait a minute. What? Oh! Stop. My brainiacs. Obviously, my students have heard me say this until they could just die, because I'm saying it over and over for the students that don't get it the first time. So my students with me today said, don't put this on the board. You want your audience to look at the sheet. So if you would look at your sheet. I printed it for you because you're probably not going to look it up if I say, oh, look this up. Here it is. So proofread numerous times and correct typographical errors. If it's that important, get somebody else to proofread it too and say, look for typographical errors. 2, read for verb tense consistency. Oh, guess what? See Writer's Handbook. If you don't understand tense. Is tense complicated? To some people it is. Uncomplicated. Write in simpler tenses. But what do I want you to write so I can read it and I know what you're saying? Analyze each paragraph to be sure sentences are arranged properly. A lot of people just have too much empty verbiage and need to dump an entire sentence or half a sentence. But I put it in read aloud. That's another stop thing. Give yourself permission to read aloud. If you read aloud, you can tell it doesn't go there. How many of you read aloud? Oh, bless you. Bless you. Very difficult thing to get people to do. All right? So, focus on your topic in such a way readers know your focus and can make sense of your points. Now, in here I didn't say your audience. Every one of you knows audience, right? So some things I'm not saying because that's too first grade and you're already past that. So you know, or too basic, and you're already past that. Use first, second, or third person as appropriate to the work. If you're writing a how-to magazine, what's appropriate? What person are you going to use usually? What?
Second.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
Second.
Yeah. Thank you. I value that. Second, because you are telling them what? Do this, unscrew that, and you're not usually using what word? You're not using I and you're not using you. You're usually using what? Unscrew this. It's an implied you, right? You're using a command sort of language. So then you go on and you can read it. Use contractions as appropriate to the work. You're writing a novel. I did a novel on my husband's experience in Vietnam. And guess what? My specialty in life is biography and autobiography and memoir, and they're based on inherited narrative and personal narrative. What is the nexus of your inherited narrative to your personal narrative? Right? Got that? Your inherited narrative. What is the nexus, or how does your inherited narrative, you know what that is? Your stories from the past that were handed down to you, and your personal narrative, how do they come together? How does that form your impression of how you're going to direct your writing? Generally not a how-to, but for instance, I gave a character a Southern Appalachian voice because that's my area of linguistics. Ask me my first foreign language. I speak Southern Appalachian, and I've put about 20 years into learning and studying Southern Appalachian. So I can change y'all real quick here, and if you put a character in another voice, you can have an identifiable character by the reader. If you were interviewing someone for an article and you give the character the voice they should have, then it can be identified by the reader or the viewer, because we can do documentary here and put that thing on film. We're doing a video here just as an experience for my class students, and we want to see how would this kind of lecture work on a video. Would it work for students? So we're going to get some students to view it and see if it would impress them that they would actually watch it. Okay? So give the voice appropriate to your work, and it will make a memorable impression. If your voice needs contractions, give that voice contractions. If you're doing a really upper level study and it's going to only go to PhDs and you're going to impress your department head, you ain't going to say this, folks. It's going to be in another full language. So that's what you're doing when you're writing, and you're putting the language correctly, the people, the person, the tense, and the overall language. Use active voice when possible. I know most of you have heard that. I skipped 7 on purpose. Vary sentence length, have you heard that? That helps. And find examples concerning the above issues in writing reference guides, and use one. We're going to use that today. And the last thing is my favorite. Avoid empty rhetoric. And I love to call it verbal clutter. Get rid of that verbal clutter. And here are a few of the words that I don't allow. Technically. Really. Oh, excuse me. Really is one of those words. What does it mean? Nothing. Unless you're doing a sitcom and you have a character that's saying really, or you're writing a novel and you need a character saying really. The other horrors are just, very. I've stopped my husband from putting very truly yours at the end of a letter. And he has said, I am an insurance executive. And when I went to insurance executive school, they told me the proper way to close a letter is very truly yours. And I said, I can't take it. You've got to stop it. What does very mean? And it means extra something. How can it mean extra truly and yours? Are you going to go take out their garbage? So, at any rate, different words mean different things. And here's the student word. And I'm going to wreck your brain right now. You'll never get over this word, and you will correct everybody. Oh, that was real Southern Appalachian. I should say, you will correct everyone. See? Look at that. You were already correcting me. Good grief. I've got somebody ahead of the curve here. What's the word? Who can guess the word? The biggest sinful word in the English language. Oh, somebody beat you. Who said that?
Light.
I am so sorry I don't have a... You keep getting in my talk. Andrew did not remind me to bring a lollipop, but I owe you. You are one smart chickie. Why? Ask James Greer. Ask Andrew Strayhorn. I have students that will get up to speak and they can't do anything without the word like. Everything's like this, like that, like man, like I can't even think of all the likes. And they just start giggling because I have to keep stopping the student and say, please do not use like. And therefore I added that to this little sheet just for people after being tortured with the word like. For example, start thinking when you're writing, what do you mean? So, read this. This is a true writing. I did not make this up. It's not on your paper. I put the focus down there. Am I close? I had James and Andrew agree with me. You like it? Picture this. You're publishing on Twitter. Can you do this? No! Compression, folks! Say what you mean. And what? So others can understand. How? Slowly? Torturously? Don't you? I have a torturous one. Wait till you see the torture. It's coming up next. But if I did not do this, I did this for expediency. But if I did not do this, guess what? I would ask you to do it. And we would have a different way of compressing this with every person in the room. It's like, where were you? If I put you four in front of the building and said, now write me a report on what you saw over the next hour. And then you came in, all four would be different. So that's what it means when you're writing. Does this really take away from your language? People say this to me, students over and over, and friends and fellow writers. I write the way I fill in that. Talk! You all know that. Is there anything wrong with that?
Yes.
No! Helen, no! I teach compression. And so I teach them to take the way they don't ever say the way I speak. They always say, this is the way I talk. Okay, so if this is the way you talk, you can do something about it. And that 10 points. Isn't it?
That's true.
It's true, Professor. So, go to the next one. This is where you take center stage. You have this. You may work together because Lori Strauss will throw me out of here. All right, look at the first one. Jot down what you think it should be because someone's going to have to perform here. I need a performance. Somebody has to volunteer to get up and say what they think should be done. Anybody want their own? I'm using real writing here. Wait till you see the professional one. Oh yes.
People are starting sentences with. So, like when they do interviews on TV.
So what?
Really?
Okay, we have a must-do to that list. Add so.
Professor.
In the beginning of a sentence.
Well, he's going to remind me of the next thing. Quickly. We were supposed to set our timer, and we forgot to set it because we were so busy hooking up the computer. So will you?
Yep.
Thank you so much. 5 minutes.
Just how about 25 minutes?
So far? Okay, good.
We're 25 minutes long.
Okay. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So this is close to the end. When we get here, we can have questions. And we can have added directions. I'm getting added directions. Oh, who's doing it? Are you the speaker? Please stand up. Yes, I'm going to give you the stage. This is how I do students. I want to hear what they say. I used to have a girl in a class named Sarah Johnson, And man, she could tear these things up. I put one up on the board and she'd jump out there and do it, and people got upset because she could do it faster. So it can be a game. Go.
Do you want me to, I'm reading the whole thing, or?
No, I want you to say your compression,
My
but
compression
you
version?
need to speak very loudly.
Okay, all right, okay, here we go. Electricity will become cheaper once production companies switch to solar energy.
Aha. Wait, that's excellent. All right, that's back. Don't you think that's good? Is that what it says? Do we need to read this other stuff here? No. But then again, not one person said who's the audience. So you are my audience for this today, and that's implied. But if it were, well, I can't think of who the rest of the audience would be. All right, this is one that was worked by students. Electricity will become less expensive for homeowners once solar energy can be produced inexpensively. The energy industry will continue relying on coal mining and nuclear energy until the manufacture of solar panels can be produced affordably. So that covers sort of like the who, what, and why of the whole thing. But here's the deal. Can she be wrong? No! What is your format? What is your format? If it's Twitter, you gotta go with exactly. If it's a mobile phone, if it's an editor who comes in and says, I need a filler, what can you do in a 4 column inches? Can she do something in 4 column inches? Yes, 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 yes. Go. The next one. Automobile manufacturing jobs. All right, it has to be somebody from over here. Who's going to be the one? Jot it down real quickly. Somebody be my patsy over here. I don't want that side of the room to get ahead of this side of the room. Andrew, I forgot you were going to follow me with a camera. That's scary stuff.
I know. Here you go.
Who's got it? Ooh, thank you. Stand up, please.
Okay, I'm gonna try.
Very loudly.
Automobile jobs can be dangerous given the task. It depends on whether it's done by women. Automobile jobs can be dangerous.
Right.
Consider the task whether it should be done by a human or by a robot.
Good. Is that great? That's very good. Perfect. All right, I'm giving James away. I forced James Greer up here to do the answer. There's his answer. Dangerous industrial operations are conducted by robotics and artificial intelligence software, often leaving laborers out of work and a livelihood. But now he worked at doing it in one sentence. I didn't ask anybody else to, I didn't give you parameters because we just want you to know that you can fit your words your way, tell your story, and it's going to mean the same thing.
Also, he added something at the end.
Yeah.
That would speak to a specific audience.
Right, and he added something that would speak to a specific audience. You just don't know that he probably read the rest of the paragraph that this was involved, or Andrew wrote it, the original, and he had to solve it. Okay? Now, this was written by a professional author. This is the draft submitted to the publisher. I got this from the publisher, and who had questions about how the overall document should be edited. And so what you have here is a style, a rolling style of the writer. And the publisher, this writer has done 4 books on the American Civil War, and that told the publisher that I know that if he didn't publish it the way he wanted it, he was going to pull the book and have somebody else publish it. And that goes on, It's up to you. You can do that, especially if you have a couple books. An impressive military procession to escort Sherman's remains to the train that would carry them to their final resting place in Calvary Cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm not making this up, y'all. Where he would join his wife Ellen, who had predeceased him, comma followed. All right, make it simple, folks. All right, you ready? All right, stand up. You know the procedure. You must stand and be counted.
Sherman was buried next to his wife, Ellen. I'm in broadcasting.
But she's in broadcasting, so she knows what she's doing. She knows it's got to really be short. It has to be a conservation of words. So here is the way a writer did
Yeah,
it.
but I have a question. I have a grammar question because I can't figure out who followed who.
That's it. But see, say you are reading this.
I'm like, is the procession following the
Who
remains?
said that? Exactly. It doesn't read right. You can't. What happens when a writer publishes something like this? What does it do to the reader? It confuses them, and sometimes it does what?
They check out.
Exactly. They check out. So when you can grab the reader's attention, you can often embellish. And I usually say, be sure you're embellishing with important detail, not just so like as, and some explanation about somebody and going around the world in a spaceship.
I want to ask the author if he thinks that the remains, the procession followed the remains, or
She still wants to figure it out.
this is driving me crazy.
I cannot figure it out, and the publisher sent me, this is part of a prologue, and I called him last night and said, I'm sorry. Sometimes people get caught up in a style of writing that I call convoluted, and just because I call it convoluted doesn't mean a lot of people want to read it. That's just not my taste. And if you had to ask me to work with this, I would have to be instructing this person on total revision, right? And do you know how long that would take on like a 65,000 word book? Holy, how long does it take to read the book? It may take you 6 hours or 10 hours. If it's this difficult to read, it can take you 20. So if you're getting paid, you have to read the whole document before you can do the help with revision or punctuation or word choice. So here's what. An impressive military procession escorted Sherman's remains to the train that would carry him to his final resting place in Calvary Cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri. It was too difficult for the person interpreting this to put the wife in, because we didn't know if the wife's casket had already been buried and they were digging it up. And somebody said, predeceased, Lynn, predeceased. I said, what does that mean? Did she die 5 minutes before he did? She died 3 weeks. Some areas of the United States, like I had a friend whose grandmother died in Vermont, and they put the body on ice until spring because you couldn't dig in the frozen cemetery. So we don't have all those answers. Could be interesting. Could be interesting. So, I'll ask you if you have any questions, so I'm going to quickly close. Here is a question that comes to me frequently. To preserve or not to preserve? I am sent more emails about changes in the English language. We're going to change the use of this, and we're going to change the use of that. And so I have students that will say, excuse me, I read this article, and it's not what is in the handbook. You are obviously teaching the old-fashioned English. And they'll say, I'm teaching you standard English that everybody can understand, hopefully, even if you're living in Great Britain. And so the latest thing was who and whom. Say, look, you are going to do the same thing. Do you know what you do with that? What do you do, folks? If that's a stumper, you either don't use who or whom, and I'm really going to wrap your brain again. You either just avoid it and reword your sentence. Look at all the ways we reworded sentences today. You can reword it without who or whom. Or you look it up. And if this is your stumper in life, you write a little card and you take it with you everywhere you go. So if you have to write who or whom, you just take it out. Because here is my point. You will never not use who or whom correctly. Not be misdirected and use it incorrectly, because you will think of this. I hope I have shared something with you that you can take home. I usually say, you're all professionals in here. It's very difficult to tell professionals just even one thing they didn't know, so, or inspire you. So if I didn't tell you anything new, hopefully I inspired you in some way. And I really, again, appreciate being here. It's a wonderful honor. I want to thank Wade from the back. My wonderful students. Kennesaw University is nothing without students. Andrew Strayhorn is in my 1102 class, and James Greer is not only a student, but he is a wonderful veteran student. So we give him lots of kudos for coming to Kennesaw State and bringing all of his experience with him as a veteran. Are there any questions? Because if I can't answer them, we have, my boss can, Tony can. We have lots of people here who can answer questions. So, no questions. Was I that bad?